Good morning. I'm talking about the book Tales from the Traveling Couch. I did have to make some notes because I didn't think I'd be able to remember all the points I wanted to make. I read the book at the beginning of the semester before it even started, and I have to laugh because my mom said, "You're going to read that now and you're not going to remember it, so you'll probably have to read it again." And I did have to read it again. It was a very interesting book from the very beginning. The author, the psychotherapist, Robert Akrete, he begins to wonder if he's made a difference in the lives of his patients, so he decides to contact several of them after many years after treatment, and most of them were very unforgettable. I would imagine in 35 years of practice you would see quite a diverse group of people. The ones he chose were Naomi, Charles, Seth, Mary, and Sasha. And it seemed like after every time he met with them, after he finished treating them, he wondered if he had made a difference in their lives. I doubt that I'm alone when I say the case of Charles surprised me the most. Just reading it, I was like, really? This is crazy. It was really so bizarre. And the reason I found it so bizarre, and I think why it resonated with me, was that Charles' upbringing and his parents' behaviors were the reason his thinking was so twisted. I had a really hard time putting myself in his place and fathoming and thinking, but it really all made sense due to the way his parents raised him. I think it had to be extremely difficult for the therapist to remain objective when he figured out Charles was in love with and wanted to have a relationship with a polar bear. I just can't imagine. I have a hard time sometimes keeping a straight face, and I can't imagine the shock that would bring about. And that's probably why he thought about having Charles committed to a mental institution. But in the end, he decided to work with him, and he focused on keeping him alive. And I thought his intervention, couple therapy, was brilliant. His being able to make Charles see if he did have a relationship with the bear and was killed, then the bear would have to be euthanized, because that's what they do. The zoo wouldn't have been able to go on with Zero if he killed Charles. I did think it was sad that the cure ended up rendering Charles to lose all his sexual passion. And I also, to go on, when he reconnected with Charles and found out how Charles' life was, I found it somewhat sad for that reason. The other case I found to be very intriguing was the case of Seth. Seth's impotence and sadistic fantasies were causing problems between him and his wife, and she was going to leave him, which she eventually did. And then when he met with Akrete and talked about his sexual fantasies, and they became more and more graphic, the thing that surprised me most was the way his mother treated him, and that was the impetus behind his impotence and his sexual fantasies. The abuse he suffered at her hands, it was just appalling. Not caring for him like she should have, and tying him to chairs and stuff. His mom would tear him down and then unexpectedly offer him praise and admiration, then telling her that he was nothing, or that he was one in a million, but if without her he wasn't anything. Just horrific. What resonated with me most about the book was that all the patients' upbringing had to do with some of the problems the problems they were dealing with as adults, all went back to their childhood. It seemed like most of their parents were over the top crazy, did things that were just unbelievable. And that made me wonder what the parents' upbringing was like, and that made them treat their kids the way they did. It made me angry that they caused so much damage to their children. I found it interesting how Akrete chose to work with each of the patients differently, although most of the time it seemed to me that he just allowed them to talk and work the problem out themselves without interrupting, but he did offer pertinent suggestions when warranted. I felt he was correct when he made the point that no two people are alike, that we must focus on the patients individually and see them as not a particular type. And I loved the Fromm quote that Dr. Akrete put in the book: "We never cure anyone, we just stand by and cheer while they cure themselves." I think that's very true. Yes, we can offer suggestions, but we're not the expert in their lives. The end of the book, it was my opinion that it might be best to leave well enough alone and not go out in search of your past patients. I worry it could do more harm than good, even though it was many years after the fact. It didn't seem to harm any of his past patients, but I just feel it might be better to let past patients make the connection if they feel they need to meet back up with you and show you how they've done without you searching them out. But it was a very interesting read. Thank you for listening, and have a good day.